We literally just finished filming this episode 2 minutes ago. What I thought was filming 2 minutes ago. This was about 45 minutes long. Got behind the camera, phone was not on. So, you're gonna have to forgive me. My energy is not gonna be as upbeat as it was because I'm literally just gonna do this back to back. I'm gonna try and remember everything I said, try and film this the same way that I did, talk about the same things that we did, but I'm going to try and do this podcast for a second time back to back. And it's a good way to start the first one for the year. But again, it's the first one for the year, 2024. It's the first week. We've just had 2 weeks of storms on and off, losing power, having power, floods, no food because you can't get food anywhere, which is ridiculous. If anything, the last 2 weeks have taught me, and hopefully you, to somewhat stockpile within reason. Canned goods, bottled water because tap water is disgusting, batteries, if you're lucky, a generator, SIM cards across multiple networks because if one goes down, hopefully you can use another one. But yeah, it was a pain. The last 2 weeks have been a bit of a pain in the ass, but we're good to go now. Had like a 3-week break, refresh the batteries, just refresh the head, body, all that good stuff, and we're good to go. But yeah, I'm going to try and film this again back to back, and hopefully it doesn't do it again because that's just going to bug me. But we're going to start off with what some of my predictions are for the year to start. So I think if you look at last year and compare it to how this year's already started, I think there's a lot of investigation into certain things. I think this year's going to be very chaotic for a numerous bunch of reasons. So the big thing for me this year is to try and make as much money as humanly possible, because I think there are going to be certain situations this year where we get hit by a few things left of center and money is going to be needed. However you make your money, I don't really care. Develop new networks, build on relationships you have with friends, family, whatever you got to do, make as much money as you can, ideally legally, but you do what you got to do. I'm not judging. Make as much money as you can this year. Get as disciplined as you can this year. Do what you got to do. But I'm going to try and remember everything that I spoke about and go from there. So if we look at the economy, I think this year is going to be very stagnant. I don't think much is going to change. You know, we're still in a cost of living financial crisis. You know, if you listen to the politicians, things are getting better. They're getting better because they're not getting worse. So I guess they're getting better because they're not changing. Leading into one of the other predictions, I think, in terms of change, I think, you know, we've had a deputy prime minister, premier leave. She left. I think she probably left before she got voted out. It's always the same sort of speech. It's time. It is time because you're about to go, which I think is why Albert will be gone. I think he'll be a one-termer, even though he's pushing for 4-year terms, which I'm a fan of. I'm also a fan of unlimited terms. I don't like the idea of only being able to do something once or twice. I think if you're good enough to do the job and you're voted in, you should stay in. I don't see the point in having someone who's the best person for the job, but they're only can be in there for 4 or 8 years or 10 years. It seems silly to me. But I think Albert will be gone, coming off the back of the voice referendum, not getting up, he's spending almost $500 million on that in poor marketing, poor ads, putting poor people in. It was a shit show from almost the start, and you got to go. You lost almost $500 million, and that money could have been spent. Given if you just gave it to the Aboriginal people, that might have helped, or helped people who were struggling with this financial, cost of financial crisis. But you didn't. You threw it down the toilet, and it didn't help your cause. So just on that alone, regardless of whether I think you're a strong leader or not, you got to go. Another one, I guess we'll go straight into them. Sports, I think it'll be a repeat of what we had in the NRL for the last few years. I think Penrith win a fourth. If you look at their team's going to be unchanged. Essentially, Jerome Luai signed for 2025 for the Tigers, but he will be there for this year, for this coming year. They're also not going to Vegas, so they're not going to have a disruption to their preseason. They're just going to roll straight through. I think their 5th and 6th season, obviously if they're going for 5th and 6th title, that's where they're going to start to maybe fall off. But I think they're going to have a 4th peat. I think the GF will be bias, Storm v Penrith. I think the top four with a couple of outsiders will be Storm, Penrith, Roosters, and the outsider will be the Dolphins. Dolphins in my top 8 last year. They almost got it. I think they made a good few signings this year. I think they're going to be good. We just got to wait and see. I think if we look at the UFC, I don't see much change in terms of titles. There's so many injuries at the moment. You look at the Jones and Stipe fight for the heavyweight title. That's going to happen, but at what point? You got Tom Aspinall just hanging around. I think Pereira is probably the only change. I think Pereira might be the first and only ever 3-division champion. I think Pereira might be your heavyweight champ at some stage this year. I think light heavyweight, I don't see that changing this year. I think middleweight, I think I can see Leon, because welterweight division's always just been a slow one. Sorry, middleweight, what am I talking about? Middleweight. Who is your middleweight champion? Sean Strickland. I think Sean Strickland will beat Duplessis, and I think he will still be your. I think if he rematches Adesanya, I think that is a similar thing to happen. I think he will still be your champ. Leon will still be your champ, just because the welterweight division has always just been the slowest division. He'll probably fight once or twice this year tops. I can see him smoking Bilal, even I think that'll be a boring fight. I don't know who will fight after Bilal. I don't know who else is going to be a contender at welterweight. You look at lightweight, I think Islam will be there still. Featherweight, Volk will beat Duporier and maybe retire, or maybe just permanently go to lightweight. I don't know, but I would like to see Volk take a bit of a break. And UFC 300 is coming up. Will Connor and Chandler be at middleweight? Will it actually happen? I don't know. I kind of want to see it at middleweight, just because if Connor wins, then he'll be the only 4-division, I guess, the only person to win in 4 divisions. But then I want him to see him go if he continues fighting, straight back to lightweight. There's too many killers at middleweight. The size difference is mental. Even at welterweight, I don't want to see him stay there. Have one last title run at lightweight, and then that's it. I think if he somehow manages to get a shot against Islam, that would be insane. He lost against Khabib and then tries to fight his protege. That would be dope to see. But those are my predictions. I also think for politics, I think Trump gets the nom for the presidency. I think he gets the nominee. Regardless of whether they're trying to get him off the ballot, it's all going to have to go to the Supreme Court anyway. It's just going to have to. So I think he wins. I don't see Biden. If Biden is the nominee, I'm more confident of Trump winning. If they somehow get him and Kamala out through numerous ways, because Kamala is not going to be the next one up. She is so bad, not because she's a woman, just because she speaks as bad as him, and she's half his age. I think someone like Gavin Newsom, who looks like every villain of any sort of stock market movie, but he's the slickest. He's like the white Obama. He's so slick, talks really well, but he's just slimy, just dirtbag, but just such a good speaker. I see him and maybe a VP of, I really don't know who is the VP, if he is the nominee. And then who his VP is, I don't know, because it's not going to be Kamala. She's got to go. Another woman could be in there, I don't know, but she has to go. I don't know who would step up as our Prime Minister. I just don't know. We haven't really had a strong leader in a minute. So I think something from left field would be good, just for change. It can't get much worse. So I think something from left field would be good. Looking into all these politicians and stuff like that, looking into Trump, and they talk about Trump's net worth and how he overpriced Mar-a-Lago, which he didn't. It got me looking into some of our politicians' net worth and what some of the presidents, past and previous, were worth before coming into presidency and coming out of it. So if you just look at our Prime Minister, Albanese, he's on about 540k a year, yet he's worth just under 15 mil. And that's spread across. It's mainly real estate, which is funny because he's on record of saying he doesn't like the idea of people having multiple investment properties. Yet this is how his net worth is accumulated. So again, I just don't like the dude. He's just just seems very weak. Always crying on camera, but doesn't seem genuine. You can see clips of him laughing with the media beforehand, and as soon as he gets a countdown, 1, 2, 3, starts crying when camera's on. That bugs me so bad. But moving on, and I'm sorry, I'm just rushing through this because I've just spent 45 minutes literally reading all of this again. So this is probably going to be like a 20-minute podcast. But after that, we'll be back to normal. So we're going back 6 presidents. We're going back to Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was an actor before he was a politician. So his net worth was around 10 million. You got to remember the times. If you look at their time back then in the economy. So he was worth 10.6 million. He walked out with 15.4 million of net worth. So not that big a step. One of these, so there's 2 things you look at. One of these presidents 200x'd his net worth, and one almost lost a bill. You'll be surprised too. So George H.W. Bush Sr. was worth 4 million, and then was worth 23 million. So almost gained 20 million in the time that he was in there. Then you look at Clinton, this dodgy fuck. So Bill Clinton was worth 1.3 million. He was one of the lowest presidents in terms of financial before he went into presidency, but coming out of it was worth $241 million. $241 million, almost $250 million across his terms. How do you do that when you're on a few $100 grand a year? How do you do that? I don't even care. Just tell me, because I want in. Just tell us. I will be so in with whatever you're investing, whatever you're buying, whatever you're doing, I'm in. Just be honest. You're obviously dodgy because you're banging people who aren't your wife in the White House. I mean, if you're going to have an affair, you should have it in the White House. Because if you're going to get caught, I want it to be in the White House. I don't want to be some sleazy hotel or some car. If I'm the president, I am 100% having sex in the White House. Whether it's with my wife or not, it's happening. If I was the PM, it's happening there. It's like if you're at work and you have a work fling or you're married, you have sex in your workplace. You just do. I don't know why it's a thing. It's a thing. You just do. If I was the president of the United States, it is 100% happening. And you know what's funny? There are so many cameras in there that it's probably got picked up. No one talks about it. There's so many cameras in the White House that there would 100% be footage of those two getting down. No one ever talks about it. Now, we're also going to talk about the Epstein list, and he's on it a lot, but we're going to talk about that later. So, it goes from 1.3 million to $241 million. Then you look at George W. Bush Jr. 20 million was worth 40 million after coming out, which is mainly just in oil. Then you look at Barack Obama, now, which is basically just a continuation of Bush. Same policies, same wars, same shit, didn't change much at all. Went from 1.3 to 70 million. And regardless of whether you think he's a good dude or a bad dude, bad president, one of the best articulated presidents we will ever have. But super, super dodgy. If you listen to Dave Smith was spot on because he was failing in the polls leading up to election year. But when you fail on policy, you shift to a culture war. What did he say was leading into the election? I am the first president to be for gay rights. I support gay marriage. They put the pride flag on the White House, turned the White House pride flag colors, boom, re-elected. Fails on policy, shift to the culture war. It's so true, but it's genius. So they're worth 70 million. Now you look at Donald Trump, was worth 3 billion going into being president, is now worth 2.3. So he lost 700 million. He lost more than what they've all accumulated, almost double. So that to me is like, well, he's obviously in it for the right reasons because he's sticking it out. He's losing hundreds of millions of dollars, but he's sticking it out. Maybe he's in it for a revenge tour. I don't know. Do I think he's a little bit of it? Of course he's human. If someone pissed me off, I want to get back at them. That's just me. But I think part of the reason why I think it'll be a chaotic year is him. Even if he doesn't get in, I think it's going to be chaotic. If he does get in, holy shit, you in for it. It's going to be brutal. Now you look at, they have Biden's net worth up there, obviously, because he hasn't finished being a president yet, and they probably won't put up all because the dude's so dodgy. But we're going to go into we're going to cover the Epstein list a little bit because it keeps changing. They keep updating it. I think they're doing it on purpose. I think they bring out a list and then they bring out another list to make the other list look shitty. I'm not a huge fan. I think I'm going to read some of the names. I'm not reading all of them because there's like hundreds of names. I'm just going to read a few. Again, is it legit or not? I don't know. But this list combines of politicians, hedge fund CEOs, accountants, assistants, actors, rappers, all kinds of people. People that are associated with it, people who aren't. If you just look at, so you got Leslie Groff, Epstein's former secretary, that makes sense. Bella Klein, a former accountant, that makes sense. I'm going to pronounce his name terribly. Juan Banasiak, Epstein's Palm Beach house manager, again, makes sense. Juan and Maria Alessi, husband and wife working at Epstein's home, again, makes sense. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that's already been clear because he was with his wife and kids, just flying on the plane. Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, former wife of Prince Andrew, which he's on there. Obviously, Chris Tucker, which is a weird one for me. Obviously a comedian, and he's been in like Friday and Rush Hour movies, just a bit weird. Tom Preitzker, American tycoon and philanthropist. I'm going to go through a bit of these ones. Cameron Diaz, actress. Bill Richardson, former governor of New Mexico. Bruce Willis. Sharon Churcher, British journalist. Naomi Campbell, model. Kate Blanchett, which is a weird one. George Lucas, Star Wars. Kevin Spacey, which is again weird because he's been charged. He got accused of sexual assault previously. Michael Jackson, weird. Stephen Hawking, which is weird because I don't even know how that would work. Al Gore, former US Vice President Bill Clinton. Leonardo DiCaprio. Alan Dershowitz, profile lawyer and pundit who represented Epstein in 2006. Copperfield, magician. Hillary Clinton, obviously because her husband went there 50 times, which is so dodgy. Donald Trump, which he was cleared. Andrew Albert Christian Edwards, which is Prince Andrew, which he obviously settled outside of court, which is such a shame. I hate when they do it, but because it only sort of downplays the victims, what they went through. And again, it's easy for me to say this when I have absolutely nothing to do with it, but I feel like when people settle outside of court with these things, it just downplays the horribleness of what you went through. And it also downplays what previous victims go through too. But they probably don't want to go through it again, go through court, get names, so they settle for court, get settled out of court for millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. I do think you'd obviously make money if you went to court because you get book deals, interviews, you'd be on every podcast on demand, you'd make money. But I think obviously the trauma that they go through, it's just, it's a horrible situation. Which just goes to show, nothing is going to be done to these people who get named. I think it's probably going to be a few at the bottom of the social ladder. They get probably put in jail for a few years, shut your mouth while you're in there. When you come out, you'll be good. Get a bag on once they come out. But I don't think anything's going to happen if you look at Clinton. Clinton's been accused of sexual assault and rape from young women all the time, and nothing's ever happened. So I don't think anything's happened previously. It's not going to happen now. Dude's nearly dead. Once he dies, it'll probably be like, oh, actually, something did happen. We're only just finding out. Which only makes Hillary look worse because she would have some knowledge of what's going on in the past. She'd have to. But if you want to see one of the dopest things, whether you like Trump or not, this is how much of a G he is. When he and Hillary are having the debate, Hillary has Bill Clinton sitting in the front row, obviously supporting her. Trump brings in all the women who have accused Bill Clinton of sexual assault, rape, sitting in the front row next to them. So Hillary has to look at these women the whole time. There's a photo of Bill just sitting there, looking like a surprise skeleton. You're just like, dude, that is so G. And I'm just like, whether you like the man or not, that is so good. This chick for an hour or two has to sit there with, arguably, he probably did nail a couple of them. He probably did. And you've got to sit there looking at these women, and you've got some dude who you hate just talking shit to you, accusing you of all these things, then you've got to go to jail. And I'm just like, man, that man knows what he's doing. You don't have to like it, but he's a genius in terms of that. He is just next level. So, in terms of dodginess and stuff like that, shifting gear, I read this, obviously not linked, because I read the Quran a few months ago. I went out and bought a King James Bible, which for some reason is so hard to get a hold of. That came yesterday. And it just got me thinking about like how much the church is actually worth. So you do a little bit of digging, and I'm just purely looking at it from from this country's worth. Obviously, we know the church in general is like trillions of dollars. It is literally trillions of dollars of assets, money just sitting there. It's insane. So we're going to look at, and also the fact that they don't actually pay tax and GST. So, do churches pay land tax in Australia? Land is exempt from land tax if it is used and occupied by a charitable institution exclusively for charitable purposes, which is what a church is. Our church is exempt from GST. For a supply from a church to be GST free under the religious services exemption, it has to be a service, not a supplier of goods such as Bible or other religious books provided by the ACNC, which is obviously what they don't sell Bibles. It's not as if they've got vending machines with bottles of holy water in there. They give the Bibles for free because they've probably got millions of them printed up already, and they take donations in, don't pay tax or anything like that, and it's just they give a little in terms of value, in terms of they have to spend money to the water and the biscuits and the tea, coffee and Bible, stuff like that. It's a very small amount of money they have to pay for that. But when the intake is so high and what they keep is so high too, they don't mind spending a little bit. When I say a little bit, it's a little bit. And also too, if you look at, because they don't have to pay taxes, tax-free, GST-free, if you look at how much we are taxed, everyday working Australians, if you tax the church just how we are taxed, working Australians would literally go into the single digits for taxes. We would pay between 3 and 5% tax if we simply tax the church. Don't have to tax them any more than what we are. Whatever financial bracket they fall in, tax them like that. But you can't. So that's why one of the reasons why we are taxed so high, because they make so much money and the government can't get any of it. So they've got to get it from somewhere, which is where the middle class, etc. And like people are like, oh, let's tax the billionaires. Their net worth isn't something that's physically sitting there. Their net worth is tied up in stocks and bonds and real estate investments, people, all kinds. It's not as if it's just sitting in a bank, because that would be so stupid. You'd have single digit worth of your actual net worth sitting in a bank accumulating interest. But again, when you've got something that's worth trillions of dollars, doesn't pay tax or GST or anything like that, of course, it's insane. And again, I'm just keeping this purely within Australia. I'm not going to lie, this is really rough reading this all a second time. So this article's from 2018, so it's almost 6 years old, about 5 years old. So the Catholic Church in Australia is worth tens of billions, roughly 30 billion, making one of Australia's biggest non-government property owners and massively wealthier than it has claimed in evidence in major inquiries into child sexual abuse, which we're not going to get into too much. So, the investigation was based on intricate data from local councils that allowed more than 1,860 evaluations of church-owned property in Victoria that showed that across 36 municipalities, including nearly all of metropolitan Melbourne, the church had land buildings worth almost $7 billion in 2016. Extrapolated nationally, using conservative assumptions, the church owns property worth more than $30 billion Australia-wide. $30 billion Australia-wide. That's just property. So, this put the Catholic Church among the largest non-government property owners by value in New South Wales and Australia, rivaling the Westfield networks of shopping centres, which is mental. These figures confirm what we've known, this huge inequity between the Catholic Church wealth and their response to survivors. So wait till you hear how much they pay the survivors of horrible things. The 600 survivors registered for our foundation services continue to experience minimal compensation and lack of comprehensive care in relation to their church abuse. So this article is from the Sydney Morning Herald too, by the way. They say their needs are of the lowest of church's priorities. How much do you think the church pays them for monetary compensation? Monetary payments to abuse survivors have averaged at just $49,000 under Towards Healing, the national compensation system established by the church in 1996. Imagine having property worth $30 billion, not including donations, anything like that, stocks, investments, whatever. $30 billion, and giving people who have been abused, on average, a wage, 50 grand, which Are they taxed on it? I don't know. I'm going to lean towards they are taxed on it, so maybe they get 40 or just under 40. It's craziness. It identified church-owned properties across 36 principalities, including nearly all metropolitan Melbourne, blah, blah, blah. While the property portfolio features many churches, hospitals, and schools, so too does it include offices, conference centres, car parks, mobile phone towers, tennis courts, and a restaurant. This is also including things like hospitals, doctor facilities, nursing homes. You know, if there's church-owned aged care facilities, etc., like that, they all own that too. So they pulled all of this together, and it equaled about $30 billion just in this country. Now, if you look at somewhere like the Vatican is literally its own country in where it is, you know, in Europe. It is its own country. It has its own laws. It has its own bank in the Vatican. It doesn't have to answer to any laws, anything like that outside of there. So if I commit a crime, I'm not held liable to literally the country that I'm in is laws. So if I'm sitting here, if I'm the Vatican here, and I commit a crime here, I don't have to follow the laws that Europe has put on me. It doesn't makes no sense. I've got a bank. I never have to leave. I've got a bank here, church here, whatever I want, all in this little building here. Don't have to follow the laws of the country that the church that is actually built on. Makes no sense. Which is one of the reasons, you know, you look at parents who put their kids in, you know, schools that are led by churches, private schools, public schools, which is why homeschooling is becoming such an increasing thing, especially in this country. So if you look at data from Queensland released last week show there's been a 20% increase over the last year from just over 10,000 registered homeschoolers up from just under 8,500. Over the last 5 years, there have been 152% growth in primary students and 260% growth in high school students who are being homeschooled. At the same time, Queensland is looking at cracking down on parents who homeschool, which is shit because you can't tell me what I can and can't do with my kids. Obviously, if I'm looking after them, keeping them healthy, keeping them fed, keeping them clothes on their back, leave me and them alone. It shouldn't be up to you what I teach them. Because sometimes I don't agree with what you teach them at schools. That's just my personal view. I think there could be definitely an update or upkeep on the schooling system as it is. I think there's certain things that I think are a bit of a waste of time. The school model, university model that you have to go to university to be successful is just null and void now. If you want to be a lawyer, doctor, surgeon, shrink, all that stuff, by all means, go to university. If you need an OP 1 or 2, go to university. If I want to be a millionaire, I don't necessarily have to go to university. If I want to be an artist, I don't have to go to university. If I want to be successful in marketing, I don't have to go to university. If I want to be successful in business, I don't have to go to university. If I want to be successful in media, I don't have to go to university. I just don't have to anymore. There's so many avenues for me to be successful that I just don't have to go to the old model and just getting hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars into debt. I just don't have to do that anymore. But again, I think there are avenues where you have to, but I think the schooling, even primary school and high school years, where they can be like, you know what, we're going to introduce this every term, every week, something. I think there could be definitely some sort of thing that they bring in. But if you look at the percentages across Australia, New South Wales had 12,359 students registered for homeschooling in January of 2023, which is only a year ago. A 37% jump on the year before figures. So in Victoria, the most recent figures show that there is 11,912 homeschooled students as of December 2022, an increase of 36. So across the board, basically the same numbers, almost a third increase. It's a lot when you look at it. So do I think the number is going to continue to rise? Yes. I think if you're lucky enough to have a parent who can stay home regardless of who it is and teach your kids, great. The only downside to it, I think, is the fact that I think the social aspect to school is very important. I think socially, kids need to be around other kids. I think they need to learn. I think they need to learn how to speak to other kids. I think they need to play, get outside, but I don't think they need to spend 6 hours in a room necessarily being taught some of the things that are not really updating. They're teaching the same modern history, same ancient history, same English, same math. I've never used algebra since being in school. Doesn't serve me any purpose in life. I did religious studies to get out of class, as horrible as that sounds. I've used basic English and math. Sports, great, it's physical fitness. I think everyone should do it, but I think you can do it from home too. I would just, the biggest thing is the social aspect to it. I think you need to be around other kids. But again, it's hard. But I do think that number's going to continue to rise and rise. Like I said, this is going to be a super short recap because I had to refilm this again. So we probably went from a 45 to 60-minute podcast, probably down to a 20-minute one because I've just rushed and ran through this. Going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the podcast in terms of predictions, I think this is the year of chaos. I think this should also be the year of you hopefully learning from the year past. Make as much money as you can, develop new friendships, develop new relationships, work on those said relationships, make them beneficial to you in whatever way you can. Make as much money as you can, get as disciplined as you can. That's through many different forms. I've set myself certain things that I want to have done this year. There's no new year, new me, just better. And also just because I'm so sick of hearing new year, new me or 2023 season done. No, it's not. Stop saying it. I hate hearing that. But I think the biggest thing for me, I think if anyone should just try and make as much money as humanly possible. Do what you want with it. Keep it, hide it, invest it. Just have the ability to have a lot more money than you had the year before. By any means necessary, if I'm being completely honest. But like I said, we're going to put one of these out a week minimum. This will be out in the next few hours. Ideally, if this is filmed, I can't see. If I get behind the camera again and it's not filmed, I'm pissed. But this will be up in the next few hours.